What's up, everybody? A couple quick notes before we hop into episode 21, where we talk a lot about sleep and better breathing and how you can get into good sleep habits and the importance of sleep during recovery and even later in your recovery. A couple things that I didn't mention during the podcast that I want to just touch on briefly. Let's see. As far as books, lots of good books lately. One I want to recommend is Smart Brevity. Obviously, if you listen to this podcast, you know that I could probably, utilize this technique and saying more with less. Smart Brevity is a really good book. Really enjoying it. Again, the Paris Hilton book is fantastic as well. Finished that up, so started Smart Brevity. Because I was away for a while, I was able to catch up on some old shows. Two that I really liked back in the day. I've been watching Suits on Netflix. It has nothing to do with stroke recovery and everything to do with my previous life of living up in New York and New Jersey. Great show. Love the characters. Love the storyline. Just a really good show. Kind of rewatched it after watching it for years. Highly recommend it on Netflix now. And the last thing I want to touch on is Jersey Shore, because my daughter's been watching it for the last week and I've been watching it on downstairs when she's watching it. And I just love it. If you don't know, I grew up in that area. I grew up on the Jersey Shore. Lots of my life involved the Jersey Shore prior to and even after Miami for a little bit. So cool shows. I want to recommend them. Not stroke related. Check it out. And yeah, hope you enjoy this episode. So without further ado, let's hop into episode 21 of the podcast. Good morning, everybody. My name is Will Schmier, and welcome back to another episode of the Lovable Survivor podcast. In today's episode 21, we're going to be talking about unwinding the mind. How sleep and rest play an important role in your stroke recovery or brain injury recovery. We're going to be talking about sleep, not only sleep, but rest and the importance of quality sleep over just quantity, and how you can be strategic in your breaks and really take time to allow yourself as a brain injury survivor to take care of your brain and to use sleep to your advantage. I think we're all aware that sleep is an important part of life for everybody. That's no secret. That's not something anybody doesn't know, but I think it is really, really, really super important for survivors. And there are some things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to talk about some of my experiences, some thoughts I have in particular about sleep. I think sometimes in today's world, even today, even hustle culture is not as much as a thing as it used to be. I think we often forget, and especially if you're a couple years into recovery, you might have an issue falling into some old habits, maybe not all the bad ones, and maybe it's not the end of the world. Maybe it's a short-term thing. Anyways, we'll get into all the things we're going to talk about this episode around sleep and how it just, it's like breathing. There's no harm in sleeping more, but you want to be smart and strategic. And the reason this, is a topic is because for the last month, as you might have noticed last week, I did not put out an episode. I didn't really announce anything about it. I fell behind, if I'm being honest, and some things are going on in my life. June is notoriously a tough month for me. I think this year in particular, my boys and kids are getting older. My daughter is transferring to a new school in the fall. My boys are, again, they're getting older. They're getting bigger. It's the first time that they have been out of school after Memorial Day weekend, sorry. So they got out of school right before Memorial Day weekend. So they've been out since the beginning of June. Anyways, some family stuff going on, not on my side. Thankfully, it's nothing to do with me and my health for a change, which is a nice break from that. However, there are things going on, a little bit more chaos than usual. I had some things in the tank nothing I was in love with. So I decided to just take last week off from the podcast and sort of regroup, and hopefully I'm back on track. I do have plenty of systems in place. I should get more episodes kind of in production. So I have some more topics for down the road. And again, I think this month in particular. So it's started summer. It's just a lot of things going on. Again, not the end of the world. So we'll hop into episode 20. Oh, and the reason sleep is an important thing is because I've also fallen off good sleep habits because the boys, again, the younger kids are out of school. We've fallen into a little bit of that summer trap, lots going on. So I think I'm back on track with sleep. I am definitely making a cognizant effort to do that for myself, for everybody in the house, and get everything back on track. So going into the middle of summer, we should be all good, back to weekly episodes. But I have been doing a lot of things that I'll talk about later in the downtime. Anyways, back into episode 21 and understanding sleep and the impact it has on brain recovery. So there's a lot of things we could talk about sleep. I am not a sleep specialist. I just know how important sleep is to the recovery process from a first person as a survivor. I think what I want to talk about first is I think there is some guilt around sleeping in particular. Maybe you feel guilty sometimes as a survivor, or anybody honestly might feel badly because they feel like, they got enough sleep. They slept for 7 hours. They should be able to get up, do all these things. And eventually it wears our body down. So specifically with survivors, and I'll just tell you my point of view as always, because the 90% of this podcast is my point of view from the first person perspective of being a survivor. I think I, for one, have felt many times guilty of sleeping too much, maybe not sleeping enough, sleeping in late. I love a schedule. I love being sort of regimented, but I'm also a younger stroke survivor. So I'm 40 years old. I have 3 kids. One's in college. 2 are much younger. Thankfully, I've sleep trained everybody. Nobody's really, except for my wife, nobody wakes up at 5 a.m. So that's out of the picture. However, I noticed at least during school, it's pretty good. The boys go to sleep relatively on time. I mean, everybody lights out by 10:30, myself, even 11 during the school year. So everybody's pretty good during school, but summer has kicked in, even here in Florida. I know it's nice and warm all year round. The sun's out later. There's things going on, just different things, life in general. But it's easy to get away from these good habits that we establish, especially if you have children during the school year. Even if you're working, I think as an adult who works for somebody else, you have to be at work at a certain time. Summer just lends itself to being longer days. So we kind of get away a little bit from those habits. And what I noticed for myself is that I really start to I wouldn't say break down, but I definitely notice when sleep is not at my best. I am aware of it. I try to keep good track of it. And I think what happens with me, and you might feel this way the same, in the summer, I get a little off track. I wind up staying up a little bit later, waking up a little bit later as a result. And it kind of just gets into this cyclical pattern where I have personal trouble like waking up super early. And it's weird because I always thought my distaste for the mornings was tied to previously being an alcoholic and staying up late drinking. I no longer drink. I don't smoke cigarettes. I don't do any bad things anymore for my body in general. So I guess I'm just prone to enjoying the evening rather than waking up early, but I am trying to get back on track. And one of the things I want to do for myself is I'm not going to feel shameful about sleeping in during the summer. I don't feel ashamed for staying up late. It's a constant process. And one of the things that's tricky about sleep is when you do get off track, I would say it's harder than other things. I think it's pretty hard. It's harder than you think to get back on track with good sleep habits. So You probably heard people talk about sleep habits. If you're somebody who has trouble sleeping or has children, you know things can get off track pretty quickly. However, it takes a bit more work to get back on track than it does to get off track. So I have gone back to breathing exercises, both in the AM and the PM. They do kind of eat into my days a little bit. I mean, there's a lot of things. I find that I operate better, and I don't know if it's related to being a stroke survivor and somebody who has MS. Like, I feel like in the mornings, even when I wake up at 6:30 or 7 or even 8, it doesn't matter. It seems like I need like a good bit of wind up to get going for the day. So my optimal time, honestly, is like anytime after 10 a.m., I'm ready to go. I mean, even when I'm running, like I notice when I run at like 9 in the morning, that first hour is really a bit of a grind. And that's because I wake up. If I wake up at 7, I have breakfast. It just takes my body longer to get ready, and I felt guilty for a long time. That's one of the things I had a conversation with myself about. Is I'm not going to feel guilty as a stroke survivor about sleeping later, sleeping whatever. Like, it's everybody obviously can do as they like, but I feel like sleep is so important that as a survivor, if I get off track, if I stay up a little bit later than I should, if I then have to take an extra hour to sleep in the morning, I'm going to do it, because as a survivor, I'm at my best when I've gotten a full, like, honestly, I would say I'm almost at 9 hours of sleep sometimes. And so that isn't necessary for every adult, but I feel like as a stroke survivor, that is something that I need. And that extra hour, honestly, is probably totally worth it when I start doing the math. Yes, it's 1 hour less of my day, but I think I'm getting more productive hours out of my day. And also I work for myself, so I don't have to be at my desk at any particular time. I do like a schedule. I like to be on track. I do get anxious when I'm not hitting certain benchmarks that I set for myself. It's not really any different than working for somebody else. It's just I'm hard on myself and I feel guilty at times, but I realized I don't want to do that anymore. I don't want to feel guilty for sleeping an extra hour, because if it gives me a better day overall, if it gives me just that needed sleep or rest, it puts me in a better mood for the day. So I'm not angry or anxious or lashing out at my kids. I mean, my boys are young. My daughter is older, but I don't think it matters their age necessarily. Kids are kids. They have a way of they don't mean to, but I think they do. And, I just noticed I've been in a funk, to be honest. And yeah, there's lots going on, but I think I sometimes I get ideas late at night. That's one of the downfalls of kind of working at my desk in the evenings, even though I'm kind of free thinking typically in the evening and doing some brainstorming and doing like little things for my business in the evenings. Things that I want to do and explore, things I want to read, things I want to learn, things I want to bring to this podcast. Like I do a lot of, I wouldn't call it research, but kind of those intangible things. They're nice to do. And during the day, again, it's everybody's take, but I like to do things that I have the freedom in the evenings to just kind of explore. That's my time to explore, whether that's watching TV, whether that's reading a book, podcast, whatever. It's just a little bit unfocused, but somewhat focused time. And I enjoy that. And it's just, it's always something I've enjoyed. Anyways, back to the importance of sleep and taking breaks. I mean, that was a good kind of tangent on taking a break during the day. And that's how I kind of wind down in the evening. But again, don't underestimate the importance of sleep. And there's different stages of sleep. The first couple stages are more of the lighter sleep, where you can easily be awoken or Then there's a deep sleep where you're that REM sleep where you're dreaming. And a lot of these things are important for physical restoration in that deep sleep, where you're really hard to wake up. There's the dreaming occurs during REM. And, because stroke is a brain injury, allowing the brain to get into these different levels and trying to have your body not only get a quantity of sleep, but like quality. And this kind of ties into breathing. I do a lot of breathing exercises before I go to bed. Honestly, sometimes that's why I stay up late, because 20 minutes of breathing exercises gives me I feel more refreshed when I wake up. I know it sounds silly, but it works for me. It gets me to go, when I do the breathing exercises, even when I don't, because I've been doing them for so long, but it just gets me right into sleep. It regulates my body. It downregulates my body so that I get to sleep. I get, my brain gets that full recovery. My body gets that full recovery from all the running that I do during the days. Keeps my immune system in good, healthy place. And honestly, the other thing is that I do recommend everybody who, honestly, even if you don't have trouble sleeping, and I don't know if everybody has this, but, and you may not, but like, if you snore or you have trouble sleeping, definitely sleep. I didn't even really know sleep specialists existed until after my stroke. But I now have a sleep apnea mask. I really don't need it as much anymore because of my changing and breathing, because I've leaned down, because I'm in shape now, because I run every day. However, I keep using it because I keep waking up loving life. I feel refreshed because of the mask. I am breathing better for me through my nose. So, again, deep sleep reduces inflammation, regulates hormones, keeps the immune system in good check, promotes neuroplasticity, which is super important in stroke recovery because honestly, we're trying to rewire our brains, whether you think so or not. That's exactly what we need to do, because I know for me, I'm reminded of it every day. These little things add up. And I've also noticed when I get better sleep, my brain, I just don't have any of that brain fog that sometimes happens when you don't sleep well as a survivor. Even if you're not a survivor, you're a caregiver, you're a caretaker, just a family member with somebody who's been through a stroke. You can use these lessons and, and these things about sleep and memory and recovery and attention. Like, these are all important things, and it doesn't matter what you've gone through in life, that they play an important role. And so again, I am a runner now. I've been running for 9 months, probably going to cross 2,500 miles for the year here at the end of June, which is fascinating to me. Again, because I've talked about this many episodes, but I hated running my whole life until last October, when I just figured, why not? I don't smoke. I don't drink. I should be able to run. Still a little awkward, still in physical therapy. So that's been going on this month too. So there's just a lot of things going on. So the running is good. And I've really I'm not into super big races. I'm not into the medals. I don't care about any of the silly things that I consider not really that important with running, but I like running for health, running for fitness. It helps you sleep better. But as usual, I've been probably overdoing it. I would guess that I'm bordering on overtraining. So sleep is really important in my recovery, and not everybody is a stroke survivor and necessarily a runner, but if you're still in physical therapy or you're doing regular exercise, it doesn't have to be physical therapy, but you're still exercising as a survivor and you're getting yourself in good, healthy shape. Let's not disregard sleep for recovery, not only from your brain injury, but also from the work you're doing every day to get better. And trying to maintain, I'm the worst at this. I try really hard to maintain a consistent sleep schedule. I'm not good at it, but I'm getting better. I do work at my desk in the evening, but I'm trying to turn the light levels down. I'm trying to get into the good habits of, bring noise levels down. I mean, the kids go to sleep a little bit earlier. I'm not trying to stay up too much later, but maybe a little bit of time for myself in the evenings. And the only reason I don't do that in the morning is because I can't get myself to be a 5 a.m. riser. I've tried. It's just not in my DNA. I can do 6. I can do 7. Obviously, I can do later. But I've never been a 5 a.m. guy. And my wife she enjoys waking up that early. She gets into her day. So she's kind of got that side. I've got the other side. It doesn't necessarily work out for everybody. Can we share? Absolutely. But yeah, I just haven't gotten there myself. So again, I do kind of use that long distance runner strategies for sleep and recovery. I think they're applicable to anybody as a survivor. They're very much the same. You may not consider yourself a runner. You may not be a runner. You may not be interested in being a runner, but I think the strategies in a lot of these cases do apply. And to that effect, another thing with the power of getting good sleep is in physical recovery, and not only even the brain recovery, not even physical work, but it just helps increase blood flow to your muscles. You're getting oxygen, nutrients. I did talk a lot about this in the earlier episode a couple months back about breathing, but breathing and sleep are kind of like there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot of similar benefits. So again, we're breathing every day of our life from the day we're born to the day till the day we die. So, and we're doing the same thing with sleep. Day we're born till the day we die. And even when you have one of those bad nights sleep, you feel it. And so the more, I'm not an over optimizing guy, but I think, if you can, there's a couple things here. Obviously, sleep is important. Breathing is important. We know those two facts. Thing is, if we're doing it every day and our bodies need to do it, we can't live without it, whether it's breathing or sleeping. Again, I'm not an over optimizer, but if we're going to do it, it does make sense to do it the best we can so we can get the most out of it. Maybe that's not everybody's take, but it's just oh yeah, that kind of makes sense. I honestly, I didn't think about that for a long time. Okay. But we kind of know the body needs 8 hours of sleep. All right. Yeah. Makes sense. Got it. So why not get the best 8 hours you can get for your body? And that's one of those things about, and I'm going to say this specifically for survivors, because stroke is a brain injury. You might, if you haven't seen a sleep specialist and you have any issues with sleep, I'm going to recommend this. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but you can talk to your doctor about it, but it's a conversation worth having. And I'll tell you why, because throughout these episodes, I kind of realize things sometimes. I've had a lot of questions because I had a lot of issues, and not everybody has all the issues that I had. And we don't always think to ask these questions as the survivor, or as a caregiver, caretaker, loved one, family member, etc. But also doctors are great, right? Most of them are amazing, but they don't think to ask every question to every patient every time. So they're not always seeing these things. I think if we sat, if they really sat down and thought all the way through, but they're busy people. And if you say X, Y, and Z, they might want to talk about something else that they thought of from a previous meeting with you, but they get off track, they forget. So they're human too. They want to help. They are going to help. They're going to answer your questions. And so sometimes it's important to bring things, as a survivor, probably if you're listening to this podcast, you need to be your biggest advocate for yourself. And don't be afraid to ask these questions. Sometimes we don't want to ask them for any number of reasons, but I feel they are super important. And just because your doctor hasn't brought it up before, it is something to definitely have a discussion about. because again, I didn't even know sleep specialists were a thing until unfortunately it was too late. I already had the stroke and I already had sleep apnea. And, I'm glad that my stroke doctors at Brooks recommended sleep apnea machine because I got on the right track. And to be fair, I mean, I think, I don't know. I never really had a problem sleeping, which is one of the things I've actually not had a problem with most of my life, but I sleep great now. Could I sleep better? Could I be better with my schedule? Absolutely. But no matter what, when I do go to sleep, even if I'm an hour short, like I get good quality sleep. I know that I put quality above all else. Quantity is something I'm working on. And again, one of the big things that I would take away from this is, and I remind myself of this often, you do hear these things like, I'm not going to tell you to not turn your phone on after like 9 o'clock. Like, let's not be ridiculous. But I do think there are some little things you could do. If you do get checked to see if you have any sleep disorders, like sleep apnea, like myself, that's a huge help, right? Another one is I am pretty good now about turning off all TVs in the room, which is the thing I was not good at for the first 35, 36, 39 years, probably. I'm still not great at it because sometimes I do like to watch a thing before bed, but I try to limit that. And I try to make the screen darker. TV's pretty far in our bedroom, so I don't do it often. I try to read books. I try to put something on that just eases me into sleep. And honestly, I don't know why I do it because like within 3 minutes of my head hitting the pillow, I assure you I'm out because I know, at least from Audible, when I put that on in the evenings, I never make it more than 3 minutes into whatever chapter I'm on of any Audible book. Which is like, I'll make that recommendation if you are somebody who enjoys a little TV before bed and you have trouble maybe turning it off, or the sleep timer is great, but not everybody. I don't know. If you have an issue with getting TV off in your bedroom because you enjoy watching something before sleep, let me suggest maybe Audible, maybe a book. I do have some good recommendations this week for books, but yeah, just make those small changes. I try to make it pretty cool in our bedroom now because I like it cold because I'm still a big ass dude. 6'8", 325. There is no bed that is, I would sleep in an ice barrel if I could, but I hope my wife is not so down with that. So, we keep it pretty cool. It's not exceptionally cold, but yeah, I try to keep it as cold as she'll let me. And we've gotten into a good rhythm. And I started to recognize that when I turn off all the lights, when I turn off all the TVs, and I just have a book, it is much easier to get a good night's sleep for me. So yeah, I wouldn't say you have to over optimize. You don't have to be insane about it, but I do think there are some things that you can do and definitely look into. Plenty of books worth looking into. And in fact, if you want to look into a book, if you need some help with techniques for sleeping better, I haven't finished it, but I did look into Sleep Smarter by Sean Stevenson. It's okay. I wouldn't say it's earth shattering. I think honestly, I think a lot of people know what to do when it comes to sleep. It's just a matter of establishing that habit and recognizing how important it is to your body. Cause I think that's where a lot of us go wrong is until you start to recognize like, oh, I didn't sleep that great last night. I should have gone to bed earlier. I would have felt better today. I wouldn't have been upset about these things that I normally wouldn't get upset about because I didn't sleep well. Or if in my case, I didn't really sleep well for the last 2 or 3 weeks. And that's taken a toll on me. In fact, so much so I had to miss last week's episode because I just was not feeling myself. And honestly, there were some other things related to that, but again, back on track, not feeling guilty about it, just recognizing when I need to make these changes. And I think, these are not, I'm not saying anything brand new today. I'm not saying anything you probably don't already know, although I will say, if you do have trouble sleeping, there are, definitely talk to your doctor. Consider going back and listening to my breathing episode. I should have written down which episode it was, but I did an episode earlier on, maybe back in April, on breathing. And I want to do more about breathing because I actually have a course that I'm going to release hopefully next week. It's going to be a free email course. It's I'm calling it Breathe Better, Feel Better. A 5-day email course, going to email out some stuff on, when people sign up that you're going to get. It's basically a newsletter a day for about, give or take, 6 or 7 days. And it's going to include my favorite breathing exercises and then, just some different little tips and techniques for people who are interested in breathing better. Because I find, at least on Twitter, I talk about breathing. People are like, oh, I didn't know this. I didn't know this. I didn't know this. I like this. And it's kind of like opening up people's eyes. I do talk a lot about stroke and being a stroke survivor on Twitter, but I also talk a fair amount about breathing because it's just been a really big game changer for my recovery and honestly my overall health and quality of life. And I would say sleep is number 2. If I had to say what are the 3 biggest changes for me overall, I think this goes without saying. As a stroke survivor now, I made a lot of mistakes to have a stroke at age 37. There's no doubt about it. I own them. I encourage other people who are listening, who are even hopefully haven't had a stroke. If you are making bad choices in life, I hope somebody gets through. It doesn't have to be me. I just hope somebody's able to help you recognize this. I know for myself, if somebody had just grabbed me and said, Will, here is what's going to happen if you don't stop drinking, don't stop smoking, don't see a doctor. And unfortunately for me, it was too late when disaster struck. Thankfully, I'm alive. I've got every opportunity now to change my life and have been doing that ever since. It is not without pain. It is not without difficulty. It is not without frustration. But I think changing my nutrition, which was pretty terrible prior to my stroke, being an alcoholic and cigarette smoker. Those obviously aren't related to nutrition, but you throw in some not great nutrition prior to my stroke. It's very easy to change my diet for me. Exercise. I got back to exercising, changed my diet, and I focused on sleep. Those are the 3 big things, and they sound obvious, but they may not be obvious to everybody. And then the other one, I would say, honestly, breathing is right up there with exercise because I changed my breathing last year, because I found Oxygen Advantage and Patrick McGowan and went down the rabbit hole. I've done a little bit of Wim Hof. I know there's some stuff going on with him in the news. I try not to pay attention to that stuff because the breathing exercises that I do are really simple nasal breathing exercises, nothing extreme. It's just things you can do to improve quickly. And it's led me, I can tell you it works because I've said it before, but I'll say it again. I can't give you a better testimonial for fixing your breathing than being a now 40-year-old stroke survivor with MS, former alcoholic, former cigarette smoker who hated running his whole life and played sports, by the way. Never went running on a regular basis my entire life. And now I run about the last 90 days since April 2nd of this year. I have been running I think since April 2nd, I've been doing at least double digits in terms of mileage on running every single day. So by July 3rd, I will be at about 900 miles because at least 10 miles a day for the last 90 days. So it's exciting. It's interesting. It's fascinating to me. Hopefully it is to you. I just can't give you a better testimonial for the power of nasal breathing, regulating your body, improving your health. It's led to nasal breathing has led to me running, getting in better shape. I was already doing running. I was already getting in better shape, but I'm getting even better. Like I just keep getting better 3.5 years into my stroke recovery. I'm getting stronger. Yes, my sleep this past month has taken a little bit of a hit and a little bit of a dip, but I am aware of it. I'm catching it before anything gets too off track. And that is evident to me because I have been putting effort into this since the middle of last week, and my mileage is back up. My body feels good. I feel stronger. And I've also put a lot of effort into my sleep in the last week. And that I can tell you all these things, better breathing, better sleeping, have led to better rest and better overall health. And I feel much, much better as the days go on now. So, I want to encourage everybody to really look into this. I should probably put some links in the show notes of this episode, but again, I didn't get into a ton about rest in this episode, and it is kind of tied to sleeping, but I feel like also as a stroke survivor, before we hop off here, don't feel ashamed. I think one of the hard things to talk about as a stroke survivor is that things take longer, right? We need to take more breaks, generally speaking, as a stroke survivor. I don't care who you are, how old you are, what kind of brain injury you've had. It just, things take longer. And I think other people who have not been through this do not understand the importance of rest, the fact that things take us a little bit more time. It's not that we can't do it. It's not that we become, nothing hopefully has happened to us at a cognitive level. And yes, that does happen sometimes with brain injuries, but generally speaking, there is some fatigue, there is some anxiety, there is some mental well-being we have to take care of in a different way that somebody who is not a stroke survivor or a brain injury survivor doesn't really understand. So when you see things, you can, maybe this is me. Again, I'm a little younger than most stroke survivors, but I feel like there is sometimes, I don't care what age you are, there's the way you were, there's the way you are now. We know there's a difference. Hopefully, it's not a tremendous difference, but it might be. And I feel like I think there's a little bit of guilt sometimes because other people, even our spouses or partners or people around us in our daily lives, they may think they understand, but they don't really understand. So it is a little bit on us, which is sometimes annoying because it's hard to explain these cognitive changes that we've gone through. Our lives are different. They just are. It's I can't say it any different than that. It's just different, and other people don't always understand. And so it's hard to stay strong as an individual and go through these changes and deal with all the other things we're dealing with. So back to my point in wrapping this up, we have a lot of things to deal with as stroke survivors, as brain injury survivors. I encourage everybody to let go of any feelings you have when it comes to guilt. If you need more sleep, take more sleep. I think in the long run, the payoff is there for you to get that extra sleep. If you feel like you've gotten off track, if you feel like you need help with scheduling things, take the time to reflect and don't let yourself go too long without making these changes because you can get off track. It happens. It's part of life. We all do it in every facet of our life. But I think specifically as a stroke survivor and brain injury survivor, when you get off track with sleep, you feel those effects really quickly, much more so than I think prior, as best as I can remember. So don't feel guilty. Don't feel ashamed. Don't let anybody shame you for what, the things that you need to do to take care of yourself. Myself included, this is basically a reminder to myself to not feel that shame. And, when somebody else in your life is a stroke survivor. Hopefully that's not the case. You know, those people, you could talk to the other stroke survivors in your life, and you should, because maybe they have some good tips too. But yeah, as far as the guilt and the shame, never take that. You know, you've got to live your own life, you know, and you're doing the best you can as a survivor, taking rest, taking breaks, realizing you can't just do everything the way you used to. That's fine. But again, make sleep a priority, because better sleep, better nutrition, better breathing, better exercise all work together for you to be able to have the best quality of life for you, yourself, your family, everyone around you. It makes everything that much better. So anyways, we'll leave it there for this episode. Thank you for joining me for episode 21 of the Lovable Survivor, and we'll see you next week. Bye.